My name is Claire Matthews, and I never thought I'd be here, standing on the other side of betrayal from people I once called family. At 52, after losing my husband Jonathan, my whole world was shattered, and then threatened again when my own in-laws tried to take away the home we built together. But Jonathan had a secret, a final gift that changed everything. This is my story of loss, courage, and finding strength I never knew I had. And most importantly, it's about how I finally found my way back home. Like, comment, and subscribe for more real-life inspirational stories. I never imagined that one day, the place I called home would become the battlefield for the greatest betrayal of my life. Sitting in my favorite chair by the window, I gazed out at the quiet evening unfolding outside. The soft golden glow of twilight gently touched the leaves of the old oak tree Jonathan had planted 3 decades ago. Its sturdy branches swayed gracefully in the breeze, and the whispers of rustling leaves brought back tender echoes of the past. My name is Claire Matthews. At 52, I thought my life was already neatly laid out, peaceful, ordinary, and shared forever with Jonathan, my husband of over 30 years. Our home was simple, modest, but it held the quiet dignity of lives built together, hand in hand. I traced my fingertips slowly along the worn wooden arm of the chair, recalling vividly how Jonathan had shaped and sanded every inch. He loved woodwork. It was his gentle way of showing care, no grand gestures, just quiet, meaningful acts. Every piece of furniture in our house bore the subtle marks of his presence, a reminder of his warmth, patience, and deep, enduring love. On the mantelpiece, Jonathan smiled warmly from a framed photograph captured forever in a moment of joy, eyes sparkling with laughter. I chose this memory to remember him by. It felt truer than the final months we'd shared, shadowed by illness. Jonathan had battled bravely, quietly, with a strength that still humbled me. Even in his weakest moments, his focus had remained clear, my well-being after he was gone. In those quiet nights by his bedside, when silence was interrupted only by gentle breaths and quiet whispers, Jonathan asked one last promise from me. His voice, soft and frail, yet unmistakably him, lingered vividly in my heart. "Claire," he'd whispered, gently squeezing my hand. "Promise me you'll keep talking to me every day, even when I'm gone. Your voice will always find me, wherever I am." Through tears and a determined heartache, I'd promised him I would. And here now, in the silent house filled only with memories, I intended to keep that promise, unaware of how soon my quiet world would shift forever. In the quiet hours after Jonathan had drifted into restless sleep, I'd often sit beside his bed, listening carefully to each shallow breath, grateful for every moment we still had left. In those precious final weeks, my world had narrowed down to simple, sacred tasks, adjusting his pillow gently, softly humming songs he once loved, or holding his hand when words failed us. One evening, as I carefully spooned soup he barely tasted, Jonathan's eyes met mine with unusual clarity. It startled me at first, the intensity and urgency hiding within his exhausted gaze. "Claire," he said softly, struggling to form the words clearly, "I don't want you to lose yourself when I'm gone." His words struck a deep chord, tightening my throat. I gently set the bowl aside and squeezed his hand reassuringly. "I'll be okay," I whispered, trying desperately to sound believable. Jonathan gave me a faint, knowing smile. He always saw through my attempts at hiding my fears. He reached weakly toward the bedside drawer. Understanding his intention, I helped him open it and watched as he carefully pulled out a sealed envelope. He placed it firmly yet gently into my palm, closing my fingers around it with a determination that surprised me. "Don't open this now," he whispered softly. "Keep it somewhere safe. It's just to make sure everything's in order, just in case anyone tries to take your peace away. Promise me you'll remember it's here." The seriousness of his tone made my heart quicken, yet I nodded solemnly, promising him I would remember. Jonathan relaxed visibly, sinking back into his pillow, relief evident in his tired eyes. No matter what happens, he continued faintly, his voice now barely audible. Remember our promise. Speak to me each day, and I will hear you. I'll always be close. Tears welled in my eyes, but I blinked them back firmly, smiling through my grief. I promise, Jonathan, every day. I'll never break that promise. In that tender moment, as our hands intertwined gently, I felt a quiet, fierce determination begin to rise within me. Strength drawn from the quiet courage of the man I loved, who even in his weakest moments was still protecting me. The day of Jonathan's funeral was calm and gentle, much like the man himself. I had honored his wishes meticulously. No grand ceremonies, no overflowing flowers or long speeches, just quiet dignity and respect, reflecting the way he had always lived. At the cemetery, under an open sky, brushed lightly with clouds, only a handful of people stood beside me. Friends from the restaurant, a few neighbors, and Lucas Russell, a young lawyer Jonathan had trusted deeply in his final months. My family had always been small, Jonathan's even smaller, though conspicuously absent. A part of me briefly wondered why Edith and Greg hadn't come, but I quickly dismissed the thought. Their absence, though strange, was perhaps merciful today. When everyone left, I lingered alone by Jonathan's grave, a simple marble stone engraved gently with his name. My fingertips traced the letters softly, each carving now immortalizing the years we had shared. The gentle spring breeze touched my shoulders, almost as if Jonathan himself were quietly reminding me of my promise. I'll keep my promise, I whispered softly, fighting back tears. I'll talk to you every day, Jonathan. I'll never stop. Returning home afterward felt surreal. The house seemed to hold its breath in quiet mourning, empty yet bursting with memories. Everywhere I looked, I saw Jonathan. His worn slippers by the fireplace, his favorite coffee cup still waiting patiently by the sink. Even his reading glasses left casually on the side table next to the unfinished novel he'd planned to finish. Each simple reminder pierced me with tenderness and sadness intertwined, creating a strangely comforting ache. But as I moved silently through each room, tidying without purpose, a stronger feeling began to take root: determination. Jonathan had never feared endings. Instead, he taught me gently, through quiet words and humble actions, how to begin again, how to slowly weave life back together, even from threads frayed by loss. The quiet afternoon turned into a quiet evening. I made tea, breathing in the soothing scent of chamomile. My fingertips brushed against the smooth surface of Jonathan's envelope, still tucked safely in the drawer. I chose not to open it, not yet. It was enough simply knowing it was there, a quiet source of strength and comfort, a protective presence Jonathan had carefully arranged for me. Night arrived swiftly, and with it, the stark realization of my solitude. I stood before our bed, staring at the empty space where Jonathan had slept beside me for 3 decades. The house creaked softly around me, settling into the silence of the night, echoing my loneliness, but instead of despair, I felt gratitude. Even now, Jonathan was guiding me, reminding me that loneliness was not emptiness, but simply the space between breaths, between memories, between beginnings and endings. Sliding beneath the familiar covers, I whispered softly into the dark room, imagining Jonathan's quiet laughter, his gentle eyes watching over me. Good night, my love. I'll see you again tomorrow. In that quiet promise, I felt a gentle warmth envelop me, perhaps merely memory, perhaps something more profound. I closed my eyes, comforted by the certainty that Jonathan's spirit was never far away, guiding me quietly forward into whatever tomorrow might bring. The knock on my door shattered the peaceful silence of my morning, sharp and intrusive. I paused, my coffee cup suspended halfway to my lips, heart suddenly quickening with confusion. Visitors were rare these days, especially unannounced ones. Setting down the cup carefully, I moved toward the door. The knocking grew louder, more insistent, impatient even. My pulse quickened again, this time with a vague sense of dread. I placed my hand on the cold metal doorknob, took a quiet breath, and slowly opened the door. Standing on my porch were 3 faces I hadn't expected to see so soon. Edith, Greg, and Crystal, each staring back at me with expressions ranging from smugness to thinly veiled hostility. Behind them clustered their 7 children, restless and noisy, shifting impatiently on the small porch that had once been Jonathan's quiet sanctuary. "Claire," Edith began briskly, pushing past my greeting, her voice clipped and cold. "We need to talk." Yet before I could reply, she thrust forward a neatly folded piece of paper. "Jonathan left this for us. It clearly states this house now belongs to me and Greg." For a brief, surreal moment, I simply stared at her, trying to make sense of the words she'd just spoken. Jonathan, my Jonathan, had supposedly left them our home? Crystal stepped forward, her sharp voice cutting into my silence. "Jonathan wrote this at the hospital. Everything's there, plain as day." Slowly unfolding the paper, I saw Jonathan's shaky handwriting. My heart tightened painfully, a cold wave of disbelief washing over me. Yet something felt immediately wrong. The words were stiff, formal, devoid of warmth or affection, the opposite of how Jonathan always expressed himself. "Edith," I finally spoke, trying hard to maintain composure. "Jonathan never mentioned this to me, not once." Greg scoffed impatiently, folding his arms. "Well, he didn't have to, Claire. The paper says it clearly. Jonathan wanted his family to have this house." I took another careful look, feeling Jonathan's envelope safely stored in my drawer, echoing silently in my mind. Jonathan had warned me to keep it safe for a reason. I was beginning to understand why. Though my heart raced with hurt and confusion, I refused to show any sign of weakness. Calmly, I folded their supposed document back into place, meeting Edith's gaze steadily. "Give me some time to review this," I said quietly, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "You must understand, this is quite a shock." Edith's eyes narrowed slightly, clearly expecting immediate surrender, but she nodded curtly, obviously convinced she had already won. "We'll be back soon, Claire," she warned, her voice quietly threatening beneath her polite facade. "Don't make this difficult. Jonathan's wishes are clear." They turned abruptly, filing noisily back down the porch steps. As I closed the door behind them, I leaned heavily against it, breathing deeply, steadying myself. Jonathan's final gift, his envelope, suddenly seemed more vital than ever. I knew he had anticipated this, had somehow seen their betrayal clearly, even from his hospital bed. My grief was now tinged with anger and resolve, quiet, determined, unwavering. If Edith and Greg thought they could take away everything Jonathan and I had built, they had severely underestimated the strength he'd quietly instilled in me over the years. Jonathan had protected me once again, and now, quietly, it was my turn to defend our home. After they left, I stood quietly in my living room, heart hammering in my chest. A whirlwind of emotions spun through my mind: disbelief, anger, betrayal. But above all, a growing certainty that something was profoundly wrong. Jonathan would never willingly give our home to Edith and Greg without telling me. He was too transparent, too deeply honest for such secrets. I crossed the room swiftly, pulling open the small drawer beneath our kitchen counter. My fingers brushed over the sealed envelope Jonathan had pressed into my palm during those final days. My pulse quickened slightly as I held it, feeling its gentle weight. Carefully, I opened the envelope, sliding out the documents inside. My heart gave a painful twist as I recognized Jonathan's precise handwriting, clear and deliberate, different entirely from the shaky, unfamiliar script Edith had thrust at me earlier. My breath caught as I read his words. "Claire, this document certifies that our home is legally yours, transferred fully and irrevocably into your name. No matter what happens, no one can take this from you. Lucas Russell has everything official on file. Trust him completely." Tears blurred my vision momentarily, not from grief, but relief. Jonathan had anticipated this betrayal and acted accordingly, silently protecting me once more, even from beyond. Without hesitation, I reached for the phone, dialing the familiar number. After a few short rings, Lucas Russell answered with calm professionalism. "Lucas Russell speaking." "Lucas, This is Claire Matthews. I think I need your help." There was a brief pause before he replied, gentle yet alert. "Claire, of course. Jonathan asked me specifically to support you. Tell me what happened." I quickly recounted the unexpected visit, the unsettling paper Edith had presented, and Jonathan's carefully prepared envelope. Lucas listened attentively, absorbing every detail with professional calmness. "Claire," he began reassuringly, "Jonathan foresaw exactly this. He suspected they would pressure him, possibly when he was weakest. That's why he ensured everything was airtight. I have the official documents here. The property transfer is fully notarized, witnessed, and legally binding." Hearing Lucas's words, my heart calmed, determination replacing the earlier anxiety. Jonathan's protective foresight had once again wrapped around me like a gentle shield. "What should we do next?" Lucas's voice was calm and steady. "Let me come over tomorrow. I'll bring copies of everything official. And Claire, keep Jonathan's letter safe. We'll present all this to them and end this quickly." "I'll be ready," I said firmly, ending the call with renewed confidence. That evening, sleep eluded me, though not from fear. Instead, I felt a quiet strength I hadn't felt since Jonathan's passing. My thoughts circled around him, how even when facing death, his priority had always been my safety and peace. Gratitude swelled inside me, accompanied by a sharpened resolve to defend the sanctuary we'd created. When Lucas arrived the next morning, I welcomed him warmly. He was young, maybe in his early 30s, with clear eyes and a calm, reassuring presence that reminded me vaguely of Jonathan's steadiness. Settling at my kitchen table, he carefully laid out neatly organized documents, each one meticulously signed, sealed, and witnessed. "Claire," Lucas began, pushing a paper toward me, "this proves conclusively your legal ownership. Any claim Edith and Greg have is effectively nullified." And I scanned the documents carefully, feeling my strength solidify with every line of legal confirmation. Jonathan had truly protected me. My gratitude towards Lucas grew even stronger. "Thank you, Lucas." His smile was warm and sincere. "Jonathan trusted you more than anyone. He saw your strength. My job now is simply to help you uphold his trust." I looked up, meeting Lucas's earnest gaze, feeling deeply reassured. "How do you suggest we confront them?" Lucas's eyes shone with quiet confidence. "We'll invite them here, calmly present the undeniable evidence, and allow them a chance to step away without escalating. If they refuse, we move forward legally." His approach matched Jonathan's philosophy perfectly. Calm, fair, yet firm. I nodded in agreement. "Let's do exactly that." As Lucas gathered his papers, preparing to leave, he paused by the doorway, turning back to face me with gentle admiration. "Claire, I can see why Jonathan always spoke of your resilience. He knew you'd rise to this moment." His words resonated deeply within me, stirring an inner resolve. I had spent years quietly supporting Jonathan through every challenge life had thrown at us. Now it was my turn to honor him by protecting what we'd built together. "I'll be ready," I told Lucas softly, firmly. "I won't let Jonathan down." After Lucas left, I stood alone again, but this time my heart felt lighter. I knew a battle still lay ahead, yet I faced it confidently. Edith and Greg believed they had outsmarted me, but they had severely underestimated the quiet strength Jonathan had cultivated in me, strength that was now clear and unwavering. It was time for them to realize their mistake. 2 days later, Lucas stood calmly beside me in the living room, our documents carefully arranged on the coffee table. A quiet tension filled the air, sharpening my senses. It was strange how quickly this peaceful space had transformed into a stage for confrontation, the comforting familiarity now tinged with an unfamiliar bitterness. The knock at the door came soon enough, sharp, decisive, and overly confident. I exchanged a glance with Lucas, drawing strength from his steady gaze. He nodded reassuringly as I moved to answer the door. Edith swept into the room first, Greg and Crystal following close behind, their expressions smug and assured. Their confidence made my heart tighten briefly, but only briefly. Jonathan's quiet strength, the resilience he'd nurtured within me over decades, remained firmly intact. "Well, Claire," Edith began sharply, settling onto the sofa as though she already owned it, "I trust you've come to your senses." Greg smirked slightly, folding his arms. Crystal merely stared coldly, disinterested but satisfied with their presumed victory. I chose my words carefully, my voice steady and calm. "Actually, Edith, there seems to be a significant misunderstanding about Jonathan's wishes." Her eyes narrowed slightly, suspiciously. "No misunderstanding at all. Jonathan signed clearly." Lucas stepped forward politely, his voice professionally neutral. "I believe that's precisely where the confusion lies." He carefully unfolded the documents from Jonathan's envelope, laying them clearly before everyone. "This," Lucas stated calmly, "is Jonathan's officially notarized will and the legally binding property transfer. It clearly states that the house is now solely owned by Claire Matthews." Edith paled visibly, disbelief creeping into her sharp features. Greg frowned, quickly stepping forward to glance at the papers himself. "Impossible. Jonathan clearly—" Lucas smoothly interrupted, maintaining perfect composure. "Additionally, we've obtained a video from hospital surveillance cameras. I'd like you all to watch it." He set his laptop down on the table, clicking play. The silent footage flickered to life, and a heavy silence fell over the room. My throat tightened painfully at the sight of Jonathan's weakened form in the hospital bed, frail and vulnerable. Edith, Greg, and Crystal stood close around him, their gestures tense, aggressive. The video clearly captured Edith pressing a pen insistently into Jonathan's hand, Greg leaning forward intimidatingly, Crystal hovering nearby impatiently. Watching Jonathan's helplessness made my heart ache deeply. Edith's face drained entirely of confidence, replaced by unmistakable panic. Greg shifted nervously, Crystal glancing anxiously toward the door, as if wishing she could flee immediately. Lucas closed the laptop slowly, breaking the silence gently yet firmly. "This evidence clearly shows Jonathan signing your document under coercion. Legally, that document you brought is now nullified." Edith sputtered indignantly, turning accusing eyes on me. "Claire, this is absurd. We are family. Jonathan wanted us taken care of." My voice came out quiet, steady, each word carefully measured. "Jonathan trusted you, Edith, all of you. But you took advantage of his illness, his weakness. You betrayed him, betrayed me. Did you honestly think Jonathan would let that go unanswered?" Greg's jaw clenched tight, his voice thinly controlled. "Claire, please, this can't be how it ends. Think of our children." I took a slow breath, keeping my composure despite their emotional pleas. "I've always thought of your children, Greg. Jonathan did too. But you chose to put greed above family, forcing Jonathan's hand when he was at his most vulnerable." Crystal's mask finally cracked, desperation leaking through her voice. "We're sorry, Claire. Please. There must be some way to make this right." Lucas gently placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder, silent encouragement as I maintained my resolve. "You're not sorry you did it," I replied softly, firmly. "You're only sorry you've been caught." I held Edith's gaze, unwavering. Jonathan wanted this home to remain a place of peace and dignity, not conflict and greed. I won't allow his wishes to be disrespected, not by anyone. Edith stood abruptly, her face etched with bitterness. "You're making a mistake, Claire. You'll regret this." Lucas's voice held quiet authority as he intervened calmly. "If you choose to contest this further, we'll have no choice but to pursue legal charges of coercion and fraud. Think carefully before making that decision." For a long moment, Edith stared at me, raw emotion battling pride in her eyes. Then, wordlessly, she turned away, Greg and Crystal reluctantly following, their confident arrogance utterly dismantled. As the door closed quietly behind them, I exhaled deeply, my knees trembling slightly. Lucas reached out gently, offering quiet reassurance. "You did exactly what Jonathan would have wanted." "I hope so," I murmured softly, feeling tears finally gathering in my eyes. Not of grief this time, but relief and gratitude. Jonathan's voice echoed softly in my mind, reminding me gently once more of our promise. His presence lingered warmly around me, reassuring, protective. "Thank you, Lucas," I finally said, softly smiling through quiet tears. "You honored Jonathan's memory perfectly today." Lucas smiled back gently, gathering his things. "Claire, you're stronger than even Jonathan described. He would be immensely proud." After Lucas left, I sat quietly on our couch, the heavy silence comforting rather than oppressive. I whispered softly, knowing Jonathan would hear me clearly. "We did it, Jonathan. Our home is safe." And in that quiet victory, I felt Jonathan's peace finally return to the room, softly embracing me like a gentle, protective whisper from beyond. Days passed quietly after our confrontation, allowing me precious moments to regain the calm I'd lost. Though I'd successfully protected our home, the cost of betrayal lingered painfully. Jonathan's family, once my own family, had become strangers, their faces now tainted by greed and bitterness. Then, on an otherwise peaceful afternoon, a hesitant knock echoed through the house. My heart quickened instinctively, sensing who it might be. Opening the door cautiously, I found Edith standing there, Greg and Crystal lingering behind, their faces worn, pale, and unmistakably humbled. "Claire," Edith began softly, her voice trembling slightly. "Can we talk?" I hesitated for just a moment, then quietly stepped aside, allowing them into the living room. They entered slowly, cautiously, as though afraid their presence might provoke immediate rejection. Greg looked down, unable to meet my eyes, his pride clearly battered. Crystal seemed anxious, shifting nervously on her feet, eyes glistening as she avoided my gaze entirely. Edith cleared her throat uncomfortably, struggling visibly to speak. "Claire, we're here to apologize, deeply and sincerely. We were wrong, so terribly wrong." My heart tightened, yet I remained quiet, giving her space to continue. Edith's voice softened further, genuine emotion cracking through her usually firm exterior. "When Jonathan was ill, fear took over. We panicked. We convinced ourselves we were securing our family's future, but it was wrong. We took advantage of his vulnerability. And yours." Greg finally lifted his head slightly, speaking with quiet sincerity. "Claire, we realize what we've done now. How horribly we've betrayed Jonathan. Betrayed you. There's no excuse." Crystal stepped forward hesitantly, eyes brimming with tears. "We never wanted things to end this way. Please, Claire, please, don't pursue the lawsuit. We can't afford that kind of judgment. We have 7 children to care for. I know it's selfish to even ask, but we're begging you for mercy." Take it easy. Their humility was striking, a stark contrast to the arrogant family who'd confronted me only days before. Yet despite the sympathy I felt for their situation, their earlier actions still burned deeply in my memory. Jonathan's helpless face from the hospital footage haunted me, still vulnerable and betrayed. "Do you understand?" I finally spoke quietly, measuring each word carefully. "That your apology can't erase the harm you've done?" Edith nodded slowly, voice thick with regret. "Yes, Claire, and we're prepared to live with that guilt forever." My heart briefly wavered, imagining the difficulty their children might now face. But justice wasn't just about punishment, it was about preserving dignity, trust, and the sacred legacy Jonathan had left behind. My voice remained gentle, yet firm. "I appreciate your apology, truly, but Jonathan spent his last moments ensuring our home, this place we built together, remained safe and peaceful. What you did threatened that profoundly." Greg lowered his head again, shame radiating from him. Edith looked as if she were holding back tears. Crystal openly wept quietly now, regret painfully etched on her face. Taking a steadying breath, I continued softly but resolutely. "Jonathan's legacy is trust, love, and honesty. He wanted to protect me, not from strangers, but from family who'd forgotten those values. Forgiving you now wouldn't truly honor his memory or the principles he lived by. Edith's shoulders slumped heavily, resignation clear in her defeated expression. "We understand," she whispered brokenly. "We'll accept whatever decision you make." I met her gaze directly, my voice clear and unwavering. "I don't wish further harm on you," I assured her gently. "But accountability is necessary. Jonathan deserves that much, and so do I." They left quietly, carrying their remorse heavily behind them. Alone once more, I felt tears stinging my eyes, not from pain, but a quiet, hard-earned pride. Jonathan's quiet strength had finally become my own, guiding my heart toward clarity. I whispered softly into the emptiness, knowing he could hear me clearly. "Thank you, Jonathan. I promise your legacy will always be safe with me." And within the silent peace that followed, I finally felt free. As the days gently rolled into weeks, my life slowly found its rhythm again, calm and steady, like the gentle waves Jonathan and I had always watched from our back porch. Without the heavy weight of conflict hanging over me, I felt lighter, freer, able, finally, to truly grieve, heal, and reconnect with the memories that made our home sacred. Each morning, I began with quiet rituals that Jonathan had always loved. Brewing strong coffee in our favorite ceramic mugs, watering the plants he'd carefully placed by each window, and opening the curtains to allow sunlight to pour warmly into the rooms. Bit by bit, the shadows of betrayal faded, replaced by soft memories of happier times spent together. Determined to reclaim our home fully, I began making gentle changes, careful, deliberate acts of renewal. I painted the kitchen walls a soft, comforting shade of sage, remembering how Jonathan had always wanted something fresh and earthy. Each brushstroke felt healing, a silent tribute to the dreams we once shared. In the backyard, beneath the sprawling branches of the oak tree Jonathan had planted years ago, I created a small garden filled with his favorite flowers, lavender, marigolds, and daisies, and the fragrance wafted gently through open windows, wrapping the house in calm and familiar comfort, restoring a sense of warmth and joy. Every evening, after finishing work at the restaurant, I'd sit quietly on the porch steps, sipping tea, feeling the gentle evening breeze brush lightly against my skin. The quiet murmurs of birds settling into the trees brought an effortless peace, one I hadn't felt since long before Jonathan's illness. I'd close my eyes and speak softly into the peaceful evening air, fulfilling my promise to Jonathan. "I wish you could see this, Jonathan. Our home, our sanctuary, is peaceful again, exactly as you wanted. I feel your presence everywhere, and I know you're smiling." Gradually, those quiet conversations brought healing, deep, meaningful, profound. The hollow ache of Jonathan's absence slowly softened into gentle gratitude for the years we had shared. Instead of being haunted by memories of his suffering, I was comforted by vivid recollections of his laughter, his kindness, and the quiet strength that had sustained us through every storm. One evening, as the sun dipped low, painting the sky in hues of amber and soft violet, I finally felt true contentment settle quietly within my heart. I understood clearly what Jonathan had always tried to teach me. Peace wasn't just the absence of conflict. It was the quiet courage to move forward, the gentle bravery to embrace change, and the wisdom to cherish the simplicity in everyday moments. In that quiet instant of understanding, I breathed deeply, feeling lighter than I had in months, finally realizing I had truly come home again. This wasn't just the house Jonathan and I had built, it was a sanctuary of resilience, forgiveness, and quiet triumph. "Thank you, Jonathan," I whispered once more, smiling softly, deeply. "Thank you for showing me how to find my way back." And in that quiet moment, surrounded by the comforting echoes of our shared past, I knew, at last, my healing had truly begun. In the gentle flow of days that followed, I felt Jonathan's presence as vividly as if he were physically standing beside me. Each small routine, brewing coffee in the morning, walking barefoot through our quiet garden, even preparing dinner for one, became a silent, comforting dialogue between us. Jonathan had taught me that love didn't vanish with loss. It transformed, becoming part of the very fabric of our existence. One tranquil afternoon, as I carefully arranged fresh daisies on the dining table, a soft memory brushed warmly against my thoughts. I remembered Jonathan, years earlier, returning home from work with a modest bouquet, grinning sheepishly. "Roses felt a bit too extravagant," he'd chuckled. "But daisies are simple and joyful, like you." I smiled softly at the recollection, heart swelling gently. He'd always understood me perfectly. I paused, placing the last flower in the vase, speaking quietly into the peaceful silence of our home. "You taught me to find beauty in simplicity, Jonathan. It took losing you for me to truly appreciate how profound that lesson was." Over time, my evening conversations with Jonathan became a cherished ritual, my way of keeping our promise alive. Sitting quietly in his favorite armchair, I'd share small moments of my day, stories from work, snippets of town gossip, ordinary, yet meaningful, precisely the kind of things Jonathan always loved to hear. One evening, as soft twilight shadows filled the room, I spoke with quiet sincerity. "Jonathan, today I realized something important. All these trials taught me not just about strength and resilience, but about true freedom from resentment, bitterness, and regret. I carry your legacy proudly within me every day." The room remained still, silent, yet I felt an unmistakable warmth envelop me, a quiet, gentle reassurance that Jonathan understood perfectly. In the weeks that followed, my renewed peace deepened into true contentment. I began to reconnect more openly with friends and neighbors, sharing laughter, warmth, and simple moments of companionship. Life gradually became not just bearable, but deeply fulfilling again, in ways I'd never imagined during those painful, darker moments. One sunny afternoon, Lucas Russell stopped by to visit, his presence bringing quiet cheerfulness to my home. As we shared coffee and easy conversation on the porch, Lucas regarded me thoughtfully. "Claire, I can see how you've changed. Jonathan always said you'd thrive again. He'd be proud of you, truly." I smiled gently, gratitude clear in my expression. He always knew me better than I knew myself. Lucas nodded, sincere warmth radiating from his gaze. "You've honored his memory beautifully, Claire." Later that evening, alone once more, I sat quietly beneath the old oak tree Jonathan had planted, gazing at the gentle twilight sky. The branches rustled softly overhead, whispering reassurance. With calm certainty, I spoke gently into the quiet, knowing Jonathan heard every word. "I promise to keep living fully, Jonathan, not just surviving, but truly living. I promise to cherish every moment, every simple joy, just as you always wanted for me." The wind stirred softly, and as I closed my eyes, I felt Jonathan's presence warmly and unmistakably near. His quiet strength, the love he'd given me, the wisdom he'd shared, these were his true legacy, forever woven into the very core of my being. "I hear you, Claire," I imagined him whispering, gently, lovingly, clearly as ever. "I'll always be right here." And in that peaceful instant, beneath the comforting branches of the oak tree we had planted together, I knew with absolute clarity. I was not alone. Jonathan's spirit, strong and gentle, would always remain beside me, guiding me forward toward the life we'd both envisioned, a life filled with strength, freedom, and endless gratitude. I had finally found my way home.